Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, welcome back to Outdoor Therapy, and today we are talking about how to make a tent tarp shelter. Alright gang, so for this video, we're going to divide it in three different talking points. So the first one is going to be the pros and cons of a tent tarp shelter. Second point is going to be a step-by-step tutorial on how to make it. And finally, we're going to go into some pro tips, stuff you can do or avoid doing to really enjoy the most of it. So with no further ado, let's go into the pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. It's a 3.5 shelter. And what do I mean by 3.5? Obviously you got your back and both sides, but since the opening is only a small door in front, you almost got a 360-degree shelter there. So it's really great against wind, against rain, against snow obviously, but it's also really great to help you keep warm in there because there's not a ton of ventilation. It kind of really mimics a tent, duh. But that's really great. Another big pro is that it does not rely on the ridgeline. Most shelter made with a tarp will require that. Like typical A-frame, you all seen this, you'll need a ridgeline. If you're gonna be doing an Adirondack type of shelter, you'll need a ridgeline. Not with this tarp tent shelter. So that's a big plus. What you need is a big stick or a trekking pole. But I got a tip for you at the end. Maybe you want more than one pole. Alright, nothing is perfect in this world, and it's the same thing for this shelter. So the two major cons, I should say. First is the setup time. It will take you between 5 and maybe 15 minutes the first time you set this up. So you really need to practice at home because there's a lot of little fine tweaking and tuning that you need to do to have a perfect shelter with the tent tarp. So practice. And obviously in windy condition, it's really not easy to set up because you need to have the tarp flat on the ground to start. So that can be a nightmare in windy situation. Second of all is obviously ventilation. You only have one opening and you should be putting your back toward the wind. That means not a lot of ventilation going on up there. I mean, it's not too bad. You're not going to suffocate. There's still the door that's open, but it's not the greatest. I mean, it's nothing compared to an Adirondack shelter or even an A-frame shelter, obviously. All right, now that we're done with the pros and cons, let's go in the juicy part of the tutorial on how to make this tent tarp shelter. But before we do so, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss our next videos. And obviously, you can also go on our website, outdoortherapy.com, if you want a little bit more detail. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, you get right away a free gear checklist. So now, get your stuff ready. You'll need a 10 by 10 tarp. You'll need, I strongly suggest, 2 trekking pole or 2 sticks out there, and obviously bunch of paracord and a couple of stakes. To be more precise, between 7 and 9. And why do I say between? What the heck, Pierre? It's because you can do it with only 7, but you can make it really neat and perfect with 9. First thing first, you need to be able to flat down your tarp on the ground, and in windy conditions, it can be really hard. So a good pro tip to do so is quite easy. Find the corner of your tarp. So for me, for this example, it's going to be the bottom left corner. And then from each side of that corner, take a grounded and a stake and put that into the ground. You're going to create a kind of triangle by doing so, but you're certainly making sure that your tarp is not going anywhere with the wind. So once that is done, you can tuck in the corner underneath the tarp and go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Find the corner, and from that corner, from the left, and the next round it to the left, next round it to the right, you put a stake in there and you put it into the ground. Then you tucking the corner under the tarp, so it kind of looks like you're creating a triangle, but at the end, really, when you look at the tarp, you'll see it's more like an hexagon shape. Right now we got 6 sides, so this is the back of the shelter. This is the side that's going to be facing the wind. We're going to call it our foundation. So remember where the stakes are at your foundation right now. So the line that's near to you right now. So to do the door, we're going to take the corner of the tarp in front, and then I'm going to bring it and align it with the stake that's creating my base. But I'm going to move it about 6 inch inside toward me, and I'm going to do the same thing on the next side. So taking the corner, bringing it, aligning it with my stake that's at the base, my line right there at the base, and then putting it into the ground with a stake. So far we've used 6 stake. So now once that is done, we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna take our trekking pole or the stick that you find in the woods. Now we're gonna go in the front and find the second grounded on our center line, and then take our trekking pole and put it right under there. Because it's stitched, it's a bit stronger on the tarp. And I can tell you, my personal taste, I am putting my my trekking pole at about 120 centimeter high. I think it's the perfect height for a guy that's my size, and I'm about 5'8". So again, second ground it in the middle line of your tarp, and you put your trekking pole or your stick right under there. So the next part is quite simple. We're taking stakes into the ground from the side. You remember, I'm telling you, you can do this shelter with 6 stake, 7 stake, 9 stake. It really depends on how sturdy you want it. So I choose to do it with 9 for this version. So pretty much every grounded on the side of the tarp will get a stake into the ground to make sure it's really sturdy. And as you can see, there's a lot of wind right now. So we're just doing exactly the same thing on the other side. Again, as you can see, a ton of wind, so it really matters. It's really important that you put a stake in every one of those grounded on each side. It's a really symmetrical shelter, so that's pretty good also to fight the wind, but you got to give yourself every chance, and so put a stake in every grounded on each side. Now to create the door, it's pretty simple. You created some kind of triangle by putting the metal pole. So now you got to go to the tip of that triangle and the ground it, put a piece of paracord, and then you can find any one of the stake to decide that you rather choose. Like anyone will do at this point. And what I'm doing right there, you can't see it properly, but it's a taut hitch line knot. So basically any sliding knot will do. You just want to be able to adjust the tightness of the paracord there to make sure you got it exactly like you want. So for this example, it was a taut hitch line knot. And we're simply doing exactly the same thing to the other side. Again, as I mentioned, it's a really symmetrical shelter. So again, you've created a triangle with the door. Now you just need to find the tip of the triangle, put a piece of rope in there, and make a knot to the side of the shelter on any stake. I personally believe that a sliding knot is the best choice at this point. Okay, so to finish our door, our very nice little entrance there, you notice that in the center line of the tarp at the very edge, there is one last grounded. So we put a piece of paracord through that grounded, and then we're going to just put a lot of tension, again, using a sliding knot of your choice. And you can put the paracord around a tree, tie it up around a tree, or stick it down to the ground. Put a lot of tension with your sliding knot, and you'll see our door is going to be just perfect for us then to go to the next step. And you're going to see the next step is going to make all the difference in the world. Now we're going back at the back of the shelter, second grounded from our central line. There's a second grounded. We're going into the shelter with our second trekking pole, but this time we're going to make it really small, and this is going to create a lot of space inside the shelter. And voila, this is the inside of our castle. So as you can see, the smallest pole at the back and the big pole in the front. And I'm this is exactly what I'm talking about. The center line, the black line that you're seeing, this is the center of the tarp. So first pole at the second grounding in the front, and then the second pole is at the second grounded but at the back at our baseline. And voila, you got a good look at what the tarp tent shelter should look like, and it's ready for anything that Mother Nature can throw at it. All right, gang, let's go into the third point of this video, and it's the pro tip, what you should know when you're using this type of thirst shelter. Well, as you've seen, first of all, 2 trekking poles will make a big difference just because you're gonna gain a lot of time. But then there's absolutely nothing wrong into going in the wood, finding the proper stick, using your favorite saw or hatchet, and just make it, bushcraft it up. That's also really cool. I'm just saying the trekking poles will save you a lot of time. If that matters in your day, well, go with the trekking pole. Second thing is you can make this shelter perfect with 9 stake. You can make it really good with 7, and you can make it just okay with 6. So obviously I rather use 9 stake, but you can make them at camp. You can bring them if you got some in plastic or aluminum, or if you're fancy titanium. Just make sure, in my opinion, take the time and use 9 stake. It's going to be just that much better, and obviously stronger when you're facing a lot of wind. Last thing you should know is that you can absolutely sleep 2 people underneath there, but there won't be space for your gear, so you gotta choose your friend or dry equipment. I mean, it's up to you. Alright, gang, if you enjoyed this video, again, please subscribe, hit the bell notification. It really helps the channel, and tell me in the comment section if this tutorial helped you make the tarp tent shelter, or what kind of tarp shelter you like to use, and I'll see you on the next one.